talks about the judgment, and it talks about a great time that the Lord has in mind for the world. Two, 3 weeks ago or something like that, they honored some Indians. Maybe you remember that in the news, that during World War II, this particular group of Indians did a very important thing in our national defense. It was top secret, and they just recently revealed it, and that was that in spying and in sending information, you have to have codes and symbols, and you want it such that the enemy can't figure it out. And they decided and understood, and they understood that the Indian language that they spoke could not be decoded. And so when we sent information in World War II, we used an Indian language that the Germans and Japanese could not decode, top secret stuff. And so they just got honored for the service they gave to America in World War II. Now when John was put on the Isle of Patmos, being the last living apostle, he wanted to speak and give a message to the churches on the mainland. He was only 50 miles or so away from the shore of Asia. The Romans put him there because they couldn't kill him, it seemed like, and they were going to exile him so he couldn't preach. But God gave him a series of visions. Now you realize, and it's important to know, that in the Bible we have symbolic language, a lot of it. And some people try to take the symbol and make it real, and that's not any good. It won't work. Jesus said, I'm a door, but he wasn't a literal door. He meant, I am the one that you go in and out of God with, or in and out of heaven with, as the case might be. I'm the vine, you're the branches. Not literally, but a vine is important to the growth of the branches, and without the vine, the main trunk, you can do nothing, and that's what Jesus is trying to tell you, and time again. Now, God sometimes told the future this way. Nebuchadnezzar got up one day and he said, I've had a vision. I had a man with a head of gold and silver and brass and iron, a man who looked like, but made out of metal. He didn't really remember that. Daniel told him that's what he had seen. He said, yeah, that's right. Now, there's never going to be a man on the earth that looked like that. But that represented the kingdoms, the 4 kingdoms of history. Babylon, Medo-Persia, Greek, and Roman. And that's it. Just like God said. So we get the book of Revelation, and God picks all of the Old Testament and New Testament and uses all those symbols to tell us the truth of God so that the Romans can't figure it out. He writes all this and said, that's a crazy nut. He's got an animal that's got a tail that reaches up and grabs a third of the stars and lassos them and brings them down. And you and I know that couldn't be so. Every star is so many hundreds of times the size of the earth. It's a symbol of something. There's a woman that wears the sun in this book, and that can't be, literally. But it represents something, and it starts in chapter 1. It said this book is in sign language, and the candlesticks that he saw represent churches. So we've got to be really careful when we read this book to know that God is telling us in vision form truths that will be for us to know. And it makes it difficult, because sometimes he doesn't tell you what the symbol means. So in chapter 20, we have a vision independent of itself of all the others. When John uses says, well, I saw, then he starts a whole new thing. And this is a controversial chapter, but it should be understood, I think. It said the angel came down from heaven, having a key of the bottomless pit and a great chain in his hand, and laid hold on the dragon, that little serpent, the devil, and bound him 1,000 years. Now, wait a minute. You can't put a log chain around the devil. I know that. This is not literal. An angel never did come down or is not going to come down and put a log chain around the devil ever. But it's symbolic language of restraint. Jesus said, you see that demoniac healthy? You see that man who used to be controlled by the devil, you see him sitting there with his clothes on? You know how I can do that? He said, because I have bound the strong man, Matthew 12. He He said, you can't rob a strong man unless you bind him or render him helpless in some form. And I told the devil, leave him alone, get out of him. And the devil did it. I have bound Satan in connection with that man. Now, you know what? That doesn't mean the devil is powerless. Because Jesus usually told people like that, now you go and don't sin anymore. Well, could the devil tempt them? Well, of course he could. But they could not, again, inhabit that person that Jesus had cast devils out and say, get out and stay out, and they had to obey Christ. The devil was bound. So here is something that's going to happen by an angel, not Jesus. Jesus is not mentioned here, but an angel came down and somehow bound the devil for 1,000 years. You say, wow, I wonder when that was or what it's going to be. Symbol, friends. Symbol, my friend, of a long period of time. Now let's just kind of get this in mind. In the Old Testament, God said this, you know, those that obey me, I'm going to bless them to the 1,000th generation. Have you thought that through? If Moses was the number one person and his generations of 1,000 were blessed, you know how long that is? That's 40,000 years. Do you know how long it's been since Moses lived? Well, about 4,000 as you route in the amount. So we've got 36,000 years of history on the earth to yet live if that's the way it is literally. Can you imagine that? Jesus is going to come for 36,000 years. He can't, according to that, right? Because we've got 1,000 generations yet to go. But what if some little lowly Jew decided he'd follow God about the time of Jesus? Well, then we got another 40,000 starting all over, don't we? And what if that blessing is yours, and you started, and you're only 50 years old? We got 39,950 years yet to go till Jesus comes, and if your kids become Christians, it's going to mess it all up with God. You see what we're saying? It's a literal thing. Like your mother says, I told you 1,000 times. Now, she might have, but I doubt it. You know, mothers aren't. It is a figure of a long time. The devil is going to be restrained for a long time. He's going to explain it now in the next verse when this, and he cast him in the bottomless pit. Now we can't go through everything here, y'all, in the time we have, and shut him up, put a seal over him, that he should deceive the nations no more till the 1,000 years be fulfilled. Then he'd be released for a little season. The other picture, he's bound for 1,000 years in this figure now, and then he's loosed again for a little bit of time till the judgment starts. And it says he will deceive the nations no more. That is the key to the whole chapter. You see, the Greek word for nation is ethnos. And you have the word ethnic, right? An ethnic group. And the word ethnos is used in the Greek by the Jews to describe everybody else but them. Well, isn't that any of us a stranger to you? Everybody speak foreign language. It's a foreign language to you, but is Spanish a foreign language to Spaniards? Well, no. English is a foreign language to them. And so the Jews have decided that everybody else is an ethnos. Literally also translated, and it could be, in King James didn't do a good job of only necessarily use the same word in English, but the normal word we would use here would be Gentiles. He will be bound to the Gentiles, not Jews. This is a wonderful figure of telling us what's going to happen to the Gentile world and how God's going to work in the Gentile world, because Satan will be bound to the Gentile world, then he's going to be loose to the Gentile world, and then will come the end. You kind of know where you are in time if you understand this chapter. Well, now let's start. Where did the first thing happen to the Gentile? Where was the first Gentile to become a Christian? Well, so that back in Acts 10, wasn't it? Cornelius. 4 years about after the church started, after Pentecost, and all the Jews had been baptized, the church started and all that, and then they were scattered. About 4 years later, one centurion has a dream. An angel comes in and said, go get Peter, and Peter explained to you, and Peter says, I don't know why I'm here, but I'll tell you what I know about Jesus, and he did. And out of his mouth came a statement, God is no longer a respecter of persons. Every single Christian been a Jew until Acts 10. And now the first Gentile in his family become Christians. That means that you cannot become Christian because you have roots in England or Spain or Germany or some other country. You are not Jews, have no hope. But now all of a sudden God has bound the devil and you cannot do what you used to do to the Gentile world, and it got better. What did the devil use to control his Gentile world? Immorality. Blatant immorality. And drugs. And magic kind of things. Sorceries. Where they would consult the stars or the planets or a liver out of a beast of some sort or whatever and make their decisions on those kind of things rather than on God. Remember Simon the sorcerer? When he became a Christian, what did he do? Could have been a sorcerer. He had some other problems. And in the book of Acts, when they decided that they need to be Christians, they had these magic books. You know what they did to them? Burned them. Got rid of it. And when you think about this is what happened in history, that those things that were idolatry and all that just faded away. The idol temples become Christian assembly places. Churches met there instead. Zeus and all those were gone. And all those old drug, that type of thing was gone. It just kind of vanished away. Now, they were perfect. But the main tools, I'm telling you, the main tools that control the Gentile world before Christ were pretty much negated or neutralized by what we're saying he was chained. Now I'm thinking here like a dog. You get away from the dog far enough, you got privilege, but if you stick your toe in the dog and bite you, it's your fault. And the devil still had some power, even over the demoniacs, as we said before. Well, now when is this going to ever stop? If it started with Cornelius, when would that ever stop? Or is it still going? Well, you have a wonderful passage in the book of Luke, chapter 21. Jesus is there telling them about the temple, and they've been saying, the beautiful place, the big building, and all the wonderful bricks and everything that's there. And Jesus said, there'll only be one left on another. This whole thing's coming down. They said, well, when is all that? He said, well, and he gave some signs. There'll be false prophets and all these things. And he said, now, when this all happens, you need to get out of here because the wall's coming down, the temple's coming down, and the city's going to go to the hand of the Gentiles. You know what happened in 70 AD? The Romans took over Jerusalem. What happened in about the 800s? They built the mosque, Dome of the Rock Mosque, right on the temple spot where the temple used to be. There's no temple there. But you know what happened? In 135 AD, every Jew was expelled from Palestine. It was illegal for a Jew to live in Palestine. The Romans drove them out, and so the Arabs came in. That's why the Arabs are so mad, The land was vacant, they came and took it over. It wasn't theirs, but they took it over, just like somebody left the farm and squatters' rights. Then we had World War I, and we beat Germany. And we had World War II, Germany all over again. And the Turkish people were also part of the Axis power. And England and America won, and we won Palestine back under our mandate. The English had it. And the English said in 1948, we are going to establish a new nation called Israel. And they carved it right out of the middle of the old land of Israel and placed Jews there and drove the Palestinians out. And that's why they're mad. They've been there 1,800 years. They were mad. Jesus knew all this would happen. And here's what he said. Jerusalem will be in the hand of the Gentiles until the time of the Gentiles is fulfilled. Whenever this thing comes to an end is whenever the Jews get back Jerusalem. Well, in 1948, as I told you, they carved out a nation. And they gave Israel half of Jerusalem. But you know what half? The new half. It wasn't a Bible city at all. It was a suburb, like you got Ankeny instead of Des Moines. Like that. They didn't get Des Moines, they got Ankeny. They didn't get Jerusalem, they got the suburbs. That was 48. In 1967, there was a 5 or 6 day war, and when all the dust settled, Israel had expanded in every direction, including, for the first time in over 1,800 years, for the first time, the Jews now own the original city of Jerusalem. You shake your head. That's an amazing Bible prophecy in your day when now the Jews own Jerusalem, and that ends this period of time. The time of the binding of Satan is over with because now Jerusalem is in the hand of the Jews. That's what he said. The time of the Gentiles. And when that's over with, then Satan is loosed. Let me just ask you, in your own mind, what happened about 1967 and 70? What kind of things started happening in America about then? The drug, the Eastern mystical religions, the promiscuity of everything that the 60s were a revolutionary period of time. Hasn't gotten any better. Does that make sense? That that's what he's telling us by symbolic language? That I'm going to let the devil be knocked down and let the gospel go to the world? I gave him a chance, but God's not going to force you to be a Christian. You're not going to make it easy necessarily. And so he's going to let the devil, for whatever reason he has, to go ahead and redo what he used to do, and he's doing a good job of it, wouldn't you say? He is controlling the world similar to what he used to with the same kind of things he used to do it with. But it's a short time. He also says this, I saw thrones, and they that sat on them, and judgment given to them. Who were they? They're the souls of those that were beheaded. Now, who is the beheaded ones? Well, that's the ones the Romans killed. That's how they killed them. And he said the rest of the dead didn't live until the 1,000 years was over with. Do you understand what he's talking about here? That the martyrs, not literally, they didn't come to walk on the earth with no heads. What he's talking about is symbolic language, and that is that the martyrs had influence on us, didn't they? You hear about Cyprian, you hear about Justin Martyr, you hear about Ignatius, you read Fox's Book of Martyrs, and you're encouraged, I ought to be faithful to God. Look at what those people did, ate by lions and all kinds of terrible stuff. And we say, now there's an inspiration for me. Tell me what you learned from a pagan Roman. They don't have any influence. But they are having more influence because people are now trying to say, well, I wonder what Aristotle thought, or Plato, or somebody, or one of the great people of the past in Greek, and they're kind of looking more like their influence. It was nothing during this time. Now it's kind of coming back. And then he says something's going to happen. Satan will go out, verse 6 to 7, to the nations. He'll deceive the nations, Gog and Magog, which again are symbolisms of the last enemy the Jews had in the Old Testament, like we say Waterloo. And they come up against the camp of the saints in verse 9, around the beloved city, and the picture is a siege. He went into your city back in those days with big walls so they couldn't get you, and all of a sudden, here the troops are. Now, if you had a big enough city, you could live there forever. Babylon, for example, sometimes would have a siege on it maybe 40 years. But they had cropland, they had a river run through, so they had water and food. They didn't worry about anything else. They had everything they needed to grow it inside. And so it was either a matter of the people on the outside getting tired and going home, or starving the people on the inside. And when Jerusalem was sieged in AD 70, they had not enough things inside to eat, and so they starved those people out. Of course, they started eating one another too back in that day. Jesus said they would. So here's the camp of the saints. And the world hopes to crush it. Let me just ask you, when you hear today's society, what are you thinking? Would that be a good way to describe the onslaught in every way against the people of God? Honest and truly? Would you understand that in every way, in books, in movies, in the government, in everything you can think of, there seems like is a concerted effort to destroy and smash everything that's Christian? People down in New Mexico who made cakes for weddings refused to do one for a gay couple, and they wound up fined and in jail for that. Well, why don't Christians have some freedom? Why don't we have some of the First Amendment rights? You're Christians, that's why. We don't want to say under God. You can't talk about Jesus. You can't do this and you can't do that. And that is, every time you try, well, here this cross has been on that hill for 60 or 70, 80 years. Now we got to tear it down because it's offensive. And not to mention Islam, who would like to kill every one of you besides, if they could, because you're heretics and oppose Allah. Do you understand what God is telling us here? That the Gentiles in my folks' age and my grandparents' age, the devil is controlled, but now he's not. And we are going to face something that's pretty serious. You either better get with it, or you're going to be left behind, because it's going to be a matter of death, probably, if the Lord doesn't let us coming. And he said they're going around the camp of the saints. But guess what? They don't win. We have a song we're going to pick out for our choir. I read the back of the book and we win. We do. You know what happened? It says fire came down from heaven and destroyed them. And if you know 2 Thessalonians chapter 1, it said, the Lord will come in flaming fire, taking vengeance on those who know not God and not obey the gospel of Jesus Christ. How about that? Just like Revelation. You see, it takes the whole Bible, sticks it in these chapters, and if you know the whole Bible, say, oh, wow, I've heard that before. I know what that's talking about. That fits all together. He's putting all these things, and the Romans say, I'll send this book on to those churches. It's just a bunch of garbage. We have no idea what it means, and it's coded. Like the Indian language was coded. We knew what those words meant, and they did not. Yeah. In flaming fire, the Lord's going to come and take care of everything. And then what's going to happen? Well, it's going to be pretty interesting from then on. The devil will be cast into a lake of fire. That's what he sees in the vision. He said, not only that, but I saw a great white throne, and somebody sat on it, and the earth just fled away. What's going to happen when Jesus comes? The earth and heaven will be all burned up. 2 Peter 3 says that's the end of it. And I saw the dead. That's what he saw in vision. I saw the dead, small and great, stand before this great throne. If you look real close, they'd see you, because you're going to be there too, and so will I. At a judgment bar of God. That's what he sees. And he sees a bunch of books, stacks of them. And they're open. We're going to find out what's in those books. And the judge said will be judged according to what's written in the books. Here's W. Jerry. There's 49 other Jerrys in America, but this Jerry Allen Weller that lived here in Moulton, that's what we're going to read about right now. And every word, and every deed, and every thought is in the book. Unless the blood of Jesus has cleansed it all up. And then he'll say, I don't see the blood of Christ here. Jerry's okay to go. But if a person isn't a Christian, they'll answer for every deed and thought and word. Matthew 12 tells you so. Romans 2 tells you that. A lot of verses tell you that. God has plenty of time. And whether the guy in Tama shot his wife or not, I don't know. I wasn't there. But I know somebody that was there, and it was God. And when you get to Treacherel and it go to his name, if he's guilty, he's there. And if the people thought he was guilty and it wasn't, God will say, no, he wasn't guilty. He didn't do that. But God knows. And you fool only yourself if you think you can hide something from God. You'll be like Jonah, get in the ship, and I'm going to sail away, and God won't know where I am. Oh, he will. You get a fish right there swallowed just right where you need to be. You won't fool him one little bit. You'll be judged by what's written in the book. That's pretty scary, isn't it? I don't know what everybody will think. I mean, all your so-called dirty laundry will be out there for everybody to see. But they've got their own to worry about, don't they? Oh, that act, that deed, that thought. Even my mom didn't know that. My wife didn't even know that one. God knows it all. And it's written in the book. You'll be judged. Every good deed was in the book too. Let me remind you of that. Well, God, I did all that. I know. I've got all that here. And you try to say, well, God, remember, I did this or that to somebody. Because I know. But even with that won't save you. For it says, the sea gave up the dead that were in them, and death and hell delivered up the dead that were in them. And hell's an unfortunate translation there because it should be Hades, which means a compartment where you go when you die, like which man and Lazarus were, not the eternal place that we would think of by the word hell. But those that were dead, buried land, and those that were in the sea, like the Titanic, all back. I don't know how God does it, but he does. Brings them all back to this great judgment scene. That's what he sees. All of them. And they were judged. And death and hell was cast in that lake of fire. And that's the second death. And if you were not found written in the book of life, you were cast in the lake of fire. That's what he saw. I tell you all, this is a vision of what he saw. But it's to help you understand the reality that something real is happening, going to happen these days, and God is going to take care of the devil and going to let him back out, and we're going to have some real struggles. Going to take all you've got to really be a Christian today and stand up. And you're going to think it's going to be really tough. You think, what's the use? And they're going to win. They're not going to win. This is what God said. I just want you to know, a little season, and you'll have a lot of trouble in a little season. Don't worry about it. Don't ever give up. Keep being a Christian no matter what, because what it means is you're really close. The Lord's going to come soon. You don't want to give it up because he's going to come. Wouldn't it be awful if you gave it and he came the next day? You don't want to do that. As hard as it gets, it means just closer. It's just better. We're just standing on the threshold of the next two chapters of the most beautiful thing you can imagine described in gold and all that, which is what we understand, but I'm sure spiritually far beyond that because it's a symbolic book. But he does mean it if you're not reading the book of life. It's tragedy. And in this earlier chapter, as we sang in the song, they prayed, "Oh Lord, help, cover us with the rocks if you can." No such thing going to happen. Heavy stuff, isn't it? But I'm glad to know that God's in charge of everything. I'm not surprised things happen because God's in charge of that. He told the disciples, you're going to have trouble. He told them, we're going to have some trouble. But after that's going to be wonderful. It's going to be worth it. You know, you just break through this difficult time we call earth, life. You break through that eternity. It's worth anything and everything you commit to Christ. But be sure your name's written in the book of life. The Bible tells us that we need to put faith in Jesus Christ, doesn't it? It tells us that we need to repent of our sins. It tells us we need to confess his name. We know the Bible tells us to be baptized into Christ. The Bible tells us to follow Christ faithfully. God didn't pick just one thing. He said this is the whole process. And he told him in chapter 2 that if you don't follow, your name can be blotted out of the book. That can happen too. But there's a judgment coming. And someday we will face our judge face to face. Isn't that something? Now, Christians won't have too much to worry about. You say, read that old book. Go ahead, read my life. Go ahead, read it all if you want to, because I know that the bad parts have been taken away by the blood of Jesus. I know I'm not guilty. My sins have been cast as far as the east is from the west. Read the book, brother. Read the book. I'm confident because of Jesus Christ. And you can be too, if you're not. Our song, our closing song, our song to make a decision with if we have not. 549, face to face. What will it be? Will it be down on the knees pleading for mercy? Will it say, oh, Lord Jesus, I'm so glad you came? Will he look at you with a stern face and say, depart, I don't know you? Will he say, enter in the joys of the Lord? Is it hard for you to comprehend that someday you will stand before the presence of the Almighty God and Jesus, who is now the judge, placed in position to judge us? You need to think about that. And hopefully we say, as far as my heart's concerned, I believe that when he comes, I'd be happy to see him and he'd be happy to see me. But if it isn't that way, we need to make those changes, whatever they may be. We're going to sing that first stanza as we think about where we are with God, 549.